overseas ministers. These are in the alphabetical order of their countries. The Honorable Minister from Afghanistan, Excellency Ghazal Habib Yar Safi. May I request you, ma'am, to please grace the dais. From Bangladesh, Excellency Dr. Bir Bikram Tawfiq-e-Ilahi Chaudhary. Inviting the Honorable Minister from Bhutan, Excellency Mr. Leongpo Leke Dorji. From Brazil, Excellency Fernando Bezerra Coelho Filho. Ladies and gentlemen, all of them are very special invitees and guests. Let's welcome them here. From Mauritius, the Honorable Ashit Kumar Ganga. From Nepal, Excellency Janardhan Sharma. From Nigeria, Excellency Dr. Emmanuel Abe Kuchiko. From Qatar, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed bin Saleh Al Sarraj. And from Sri Lanka, Excellency Chandima Verakodi. And now I would like to invite the moderator of the session, Dr. Daniel Yergin, the Vice Chairman of IHS Marquette. This is an organization which is extending new intelligence, information, analytics, and expertise to drive the global market and the economies. So welcome once again to all our distinguished speakers and to the session moderator. Just a request, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be having the Q&A at the end of the session. Any questions you have, you're requested to please pen down your questions. We'll have our representatives collect those questions, hand over to the moderator, Dr. Yergin, and we are going to be taking those questions later. Only questions which are the written questions we are going to be taking. Thank you. Handing over, requesting the session moderator.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Ministers, honorable ministers, CEOs, distinguished ladies and gentlemen at this conference. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to chair this very impressive ministerial panel. The theme of Petrotech this year is, as we know, choices and challenges for hydrocarbons to fuel the future. And it's appropriate that this would be the subject at Petrotech because this is one of the most influential energy conferences in the world. And I think on behalf really of everybody here, I want to express our thanks of the entire group of this conference to the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas and to the Minister and to Indian Oil Company and its leadership for really organizing and bringing us this terrific conference. The conference, in even contrast to 2014, where I had the honor of being, even makes clearer than then the central role of India in world energy. We've certainly heard about the demand growth. At the end of this year, by the end of this year, India will have overtaken Japan as the second largest oil consumer in Asia and the third largest in the world. And we heard that really very impressive and striking prediction from the Honorable Prime Minister this morning when he said by 2040, India will use more oil than all of Europe combined, which shows you the growth trajectory. And that, of course, reflects the economic growth in India, the path that India is on, the Prime Minister's Make in India program that has made India a standout in terms of economic growth throughout the world today. Secondly, what makes the central role of India so clear is the far-reaching program of reform of the oil and gas sector and the energy sector that, again, the Honorable Prime Minister has defined, and the Honorable Petroleum Minister, Mr. Pradhan, is really implementing. Another way that India's role is so clear is its growing international influence, both in terms of production around the world and also as an exporter of refined products. And I think a final point, which may be evident to everybody in this room, but another form of influence that India, and profound influence I can see traveling around the world, is the talent of the Indian energy industry, both represented here in the country and worldwide, working in many companies. Choices and challenges. Well, certainly the world looks in many ways quite different than it did 2 years ago when we last met. First, of course, in terms of the market. Obviously the impact of the oil price collapse, and think about it really in terms of a series of 4 shocks or surprises. The first was that in November of 2014, OPEC wasn't going to try and manage the market anymore. I think the second shock and surprise was that the oil price fell much farther than most people would have expected. The third was that, in fact, the fall in oil prices did not have the stimulus to the world economy that would have been expected kind of theoretically and from previous experience. It did not give a boost to economic growth. And fourth, and I think a very big surprise, was the resilience of the shale oil in the United States, which really took some time before it started to decline, and still remains the biggest energy innovation of the 21st century. 2 years later, things look very different. The market is much closer to balance, and the big issue is working down the inventory levels. We've certainly seen a tremendous cutback in terms of investment. At IHS Markit, we estimate that $2 trillion less is going to be spent on oil and gas upstream investment between 2015 and 2019 than had been expected in 2014. That's a $2 trillion cut, and that means 3 or 4 years from now we'll see an impact on supply that isn't evident today. We've seen, obviously, cancellation, postponement of new projects. And last week, and we'll have the opportunity to hear more about it, both from the President of OPEC and the Secretary General of OPEC, the historic OPEC agreement that was reached last week, which looks like it's really going to bring stability to the market and help the market rebalance faster, and really a very considerable accomplishment. Our theme of this session is partly going to be collaboration, and that agreement reflects a collaboration of OPEC with non-OPEC countries, and also obviously required a bridging of antagonisms. These turbulent 2 years have had a big impact on resource countries and have put at the forefront, in a way that wasn't evident for years, the need to be competitive on the part of resource countries. That the world market for investment is indeed a market, and fiscal terms matter, regulatory regime matters, the quality of decision-making matters. I was thinking, Minister from Qatar is on the program, his predecessor, Mr. Atiyah, I once asked him how come Qatar had been able to develop its LNG business so fast, and he said it was the quality of the decision-making, and I think that's an important message to countries around the world. When we were in this hall in March of 2015, the Prime Minister laid out a path forward for India in terms of a balance between imports and domestic production. In that time, since then, the government has acted upon it, recognizing the need for energy, recognizing the need for balance, and it's acted, and not just in terms of words, but in terms of deed. And the Honorable Minister Pradhan has worked tirelessly in that objective. On natural gas, I think even more than 2 years ago, the recognition that there's going to be a still bigger role for natural gas. We saw it and heard it from the Honorable Prime Minister. We saw it in that film, that really important need for infrastructure, for pipelines, for development. Also, I know that companies in India, including our organizers, are focused on the role of natural gas in transportation, and it may come to play a much bigger role as that pioneering work continues. The renewables, very important part of the discussion, much more so than even 2 years ago. Most noteworthy over the last 2 years has been the continuing decline in the cost of solar. And in our basic planning scenario, which we call rivalry, we call it rivalry because we're going to see competition all across the energy spectrum between conventional energy and renewable energy in terms of cost. Environment, the big change from 2 years ago, of course, is COP21 and this global commitment that the Honorable Prime Minister described to a lower carbon future. Where it's very relevant for this audience is what does it mean for the automobile fleet. So today there are about 1.2 billion vehicles in the world. By 2040 there'll probably be 2 billion vehicles in the world. And the big question is, what is the mix going to be? How many will be electric vehicles? How many will be hybrid? What kind of efficiency will they get in terms of kilometers per liter? And that is going to be a big question on the mind of the entire industry. But the environment is also about air quality and health, and the Clean Cooking Initiative that has been launched in India is a very major contribution to both environment and health. Now, you know, 8 years ago, the big discussion was about peak supply, that the world was going to run out of oil. Now, it seems the big discussion is peak demand. When is the world going to run out of demand? And when will it come? Interestingly, both the International Energy Agency and the Energy Information Administration, both in their forecasts show oil demand continuing to rise until 2040. Others say it's earlier. We're looking at it really carefully, trying to look at what's going to change in the automobile fleet and will it come earlier or not. And I think you need scenarios to explore this. But, you know, people talk about peak demand. In the near term, in the next 5 or 6 years, the world is going to need another 5 or 6 million barrels a day of supply. In addition to needing another 5 or 6 million barrels a day of supply, it's going to need to deal with depletion of about 15 million barrels a day. So what that says to the industry and to governments is there's going to be a need for investment. There's going to be a need for technology, and significant in both regards. And it's very important for the topic of this conversation to look not only where we are today, but where we're going to be in half a decade, and to assure that the investment is being made. And that's a challenge for India and a challenge for the global industry. Now, our topic in this panel is a very general topic. It's about inter-country collaboration and cooperation and how it can play a role. And there are many different ways it can play a role. It can play a role in terms of energy security. It can play a role in terms of trade. It can play a role in terms of optimizing regional energy infrastructure, and also something very important, in terms of cost, it can play a role in terms of collaboration on standards in operations, fuel grades, all of these that promote efficiency. Other area of collaboration, of course, is on global greenhouse gas emissions and how to address that. There are many different forms that global cooperation can take. There's bilateral cooperation between two nations. There's regional cooperation through existing institutions. There's established intergovernmental channels, whether you're talking about the UN, the UNFCCC, the World Bank, IMF, OPEC, International Energy Forum, IEF, all of those exist, and then informal organizations. So that will be some of the framework. And I think with this panel, we really have a very rich topic for discussion here. We have 5 ministers from India's neighbors, and that raises the possibility and discussions of regional energy grids and cooperation. Partnerships, we have Mauritius here. In terms of Nigeria and Qatar, we have major suppliers to India, tied to India by the bonds of commerce, and both very focused on this as a growth market. And we have Brazil, another large country, a BRIC, many differences, but also parallels in terms of issues about markets. So much to discuss, much to think about. We'll have a very lively and informed discussion. And to begin with, certainly would like to invite the Honorable Minister Pradhan to address the audience.
Excellency, Minister from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Brazil, Mauritius, Nepal, Nigeria, Qatar, and Sri Lanka, my good friend, Mr. Daniel Yergin, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me welcome my ministerial counterparts who have traveled from across the world to participate in Petrotech. Your participation adds immense value to this gathering. We are truly honored by your gracious presence at this conference. Mr. Yergin's presence is always a comfort factor given his depth and understanding of the subject. The first session of the conference, it sets the stage to get straight to the business and start with our discussion on the challenges and choice that lies ahead of us in fueling the future with hydrocarbons. I believe the dialogue we initiate in this session will set the tone for the conference. For the hydrocarbon industry, fully benefit from the emerging opportunities, it is important to understand the energy scenario in non-OECD Asian countries in greater detail. Specifically, India, which holds tremendous promise for energy demand growth in the foreseeable future. Today, India stands at an important juncture. It is the fastest growing economy in the world with 7.6 GDP growth. It is one of the biggest markets for energy. With 18% of the world's population, India is the third largest consumer of primary energy after China and USA, consuming 6% of the world's total primary energy. The demand for energy gets stronger as we move into future. The government is committed to building a strong manufacturing base. We have a bonus demographic advantage with 812 million, that is 67% of our population less than 35 years. We are witnessing rapid urbanization and a growing middle class. This upward social mobility is changing our consumption patterns and leading to a more energy sensitive lifestyle. At present, our per capita consumption of primary energy is 0.62 tons of energy equivalent. This is just one-third of the world's average 1.91 tons of energy equivalent. Over the next 25 years, our per capita consumption is estimated to increase to 1.19 tons of energy equivalent. We would still be consuming one half of the world's per capita average of 2.09 tons of energy equivalent. Oil and gas accounts for 35% of our present energy mix. Our current oil and gas demand is 229 million metric ton. This is estimated to grow roughly threefold by 2040 to 607 million metric ton. There is no doubt that India is entering a period of rapid growth in energy consumption. At the same time, we understand our responsibility towards the environment. We voluntarily ratified the Paris Agreement on 2nd October 2016 and are aggressively pursuing the policy for cleaner fuel and renewables. We all collectively face this challenge of meeting growing energy demand while balancing the sustainability aspect. Even countries with abundant hydrocarbon import share of their energy requirements, as long as hydrocarbons dominate the electricity and transportation system, we all would continue to rely on global energy trading system. Secondly, there have been fundamental shifts in way of working of oil companies. Many companies are torn into market forces that drive today's global economy. Spot markets, oil futures, commodity markets are well established. Though oil prices are much more volatile, oil price cycle are not a new phenomenon. The sector has always emerged more resilient after tough times and is rising to the challenge once again. While we are experiencing a strong growth in India, it comes with its own set of challenges. Mismatch in our oil and gas resource to the growing demand, we rely heavily on crude imports and have been burdened with a current account deficit for years. We anticipate an exponential growth in the energy demand in our rural areas. The challenge is to provide affordable and clean fuel to the people in the hinterland, building infrastructure to optimize the latent potential of natural gas demand and transition to gas-based economy. Being a capital-intensive industry, financing projects is a challenge. As per the WEO 2015 outlook, India needs about 500 billion till 2040 for expansion of infrastructure in the oil and gas sector, which is 20 billion per year. Moving our focus towards the global scenario, we see a gradual shift from depleting conventional reserve to unconventional source like offshore, deep sea, at remote locations and armed with new technologies like hydraulic fracking, horizontal drilling for heavy oil, oil sand and tight oil. These practices are more expensive and pose greater safety and environmental risk. Environmental norms are becoming stringent. While upstream industry is working towards a practice like zero flaring, downstream segment is encountering strict auto fuel specifications, perform achieve and trade cycle. Even marine logistics are moving towards new practices. COP21 puts the onus on all of us to reduce our respective greenhouse gas emission. Reducing environmental impact across the value chain requires cooperation among all stakeholders. In India, NOCs and private companies are assisting the government in formulating national energy policy. NOCs are aggressively investing in R&D and technology for developing alternate energy sources and making them competitive for market. It is important for these companies to invest in alternative fuels to stay in line with the long-term energy transition. Simultaneously, many countries are working towards developing renewable energies. There is immense scope for collaboration and optimizing our synergies. On a policy and strategy level, one can already see these developments unfolding. For instance, Germany's lower house of parliament voted in October to ban the sale of cars with internal combustion engines by 2030. The resolution is non-binding, but it is a powerful statement to intent. Many Middle Eastern countries are investing in solar power. Renewables have surpassed coal to become largest source of installed power capacity in the world as per IEA forecast. It predicts 148 gigawatt of additional renewable capacity in 2016. As per reports, Saudi Aramco, Shell, BP, ENI, Repsol, Statoil and Total are setting up a fund to develop technology to cut down carbon emission. Near home, the India government and the 3 public sector companies are setting up an equity fund up to 2 billion to support renewable energy companies. Going forward, we must consider the following. Formulating a comprehensive approach by engaging all stakeholders of this sector. Working on our pricing mechanism for equitable benefit of consumer and producer. I am aware that many oil producing nations are trying to address the price volatility existing in our sector, ensuring affordable, clean and accessible energy to the end consumer. In conclusion, the hydrocarbon sector is witnessing unprecedented developments. As I see, sound policy initiatives, sustain investments, regional and international cooperation will help the industry make strides in adopting new technology, finding and unlocking new supplies, and in a responsible and sustainable way to partner in progress of all nations. Energy sector, governance, transparency and accountability is the need of the hour. Strategic cooperation is need for achieving supply and market balance. We need to treat the environment as a stakeholder to achieve sustainable development. Thank you, friends.
Let me invite the Minister from Afghanistan to speak.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, and delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. First of all, allow me to express our deepest gratitude to our host and the Indian government for organizing this conference and providing all of us that are concerned with this sector, be it from government or private sector, a platform where experiences could be shared and lessons could be learned. It is through forums such as this where we can collectively discuss the problems associated with this sector and come up with some sort of solutions. It's also my honor to address a distinguished group such as this one. As it was said earlier this morning, the who's who of this energy sector. Now, coming back to the theme of this conference and this session, the fuel to hydrocarbon fuel to future of the sector and choices and the challenges. And since we are re-entering the sector after a delay of almost 3 decades, I'd like to share some of the opportunities and challenges and choices that this sector has to make in my country. And I would also take this opportunity to illustrate how the future of this sector could be relevant to the future of my country. While agriculture would remain industries for development and reconstruction of my country. Fortunately, Afghanistan is significant work and development has happened in some of the fields, especially in the north of the country, which constitutes the major production today. Thinking of Afghanistan, it might be hard to imagine it as a gas exporting country, but gas was our major exporting item in 70s to former Soviet republics. Unfortunately, since then, we have become a major importing country for oil and gas and energy in general. The 4 decades of war and destruction has prevented us from properly developing these resources and use them for the betterment of the lives of our population. Now, the government of Afghanistan is giving high priority to development of oil and gas as a significant source of energy in the country, and it's aiming to create an efficient and cost-effective petroleum sector that would meet the demands at the least economic, financial, and environmental cost to the country, promote the country's hydrocarbon potential, and develop institution and manpower capacity to efficiently manage the development of this sector. If developed and managed properly, the sector will not only meet the local demands, but also can become a major supplier to the fast-developing and energy-thirsty markets of the region, such as India. Afghanistan has started to play its role as a major energy transit hub with the start of projects such as Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India pipeline, and as it's known, TAPI. This project is not only important for transmission of gas from Central Asian country to South Asia, but would also contribute to the stability of the region. TAPI will allow the countries involved to develop a close and long-term energy trade relation. Such other initiatives or exciting initiatives that are going on are the gas pipeline from Turkmenistan to Tajikistan through Afghanistan, and the gas pipeline from Afghanistan to Tajikistan. The focus on petroleum is not accidental. It will be the foundation of our ongoing mutually beneficial relationship between our countries due to tremendous wealth of hydrocarbon resources in Afghanistan and growing energy needs in the region, especially India. Afghanistan's hydrocarbon sector has suffered chronic underinvestment due to long period of instability as well as legacy of centrally planned state-led development of resources. And these constitute our major challenges. But some choices are being made, and they will all contribute to some changes. In order for this sector to play its potential role in the development of the country, we are interested in furthering our cooperation with international and regional companies, especially India, to gain the benefits of their long history of sustainable and responsible hydrocarbon operations. Representatives of state and private companies, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to draw your attention to a number of investment opportunities that are available in my country in this sector, such as greenfield development, rendering hydrocarbon operations such as drilling, aeromix surveys, pipeline construction, and oil and gas treatment facilities and refineries. Our needs and the needs of region are very huge, but at the moment there are very few competitors in our markets. I strongly believe that the choices and the decisions that we make today, as challenging as they seem now, will result in a better future for all of us. I'd like to conclude my speech with a hope of seeing some of you present in my country and contributing in the development of a sector that's not only crucial for the future of Afghanistan, but also essential for the development of and progress of this region. Thank you so much for your attention. Have a great conference ahead.
Thank you very much for your description of the needs and opportunities in Afghanistan. Let me now call upon the minister from Bangladesh.
Good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Excellency Indian Minister Dharmendra Pradhan ji, Excellencies sitting on the podium, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first thank Dharmendra ji for making excellent arrangement for our stay here, the most gracious hospitality that I have seen. Thank you very much. And also the Government of India. This conference is supposed to be the 12th conference, 12th of his series. And 12th decade in English is by 10 years. But in our part, it's called 12 years. So this is a new turning point for India, I guess, on this occasion. And I would like to congratulate His Excellency, the Indian Minister, and particularly the speech given by His Excellency Indian Prime Minister, charting out the future course of India and what it means for the region also. Bangladesh, by contrast, is a small country, but nevertheless it's a country of 160 million people, and the size is about 150,000 square kilometers. So it's a small country. We have per capita density of population per square kilometer is 1,000. So you can imagine a large number of population crammed up in a small area. But then we have a lot of dreams. We want to be a middle-income country by 2021 and a developed country by 2041. And by God's grace, we have been making steady progress. We are also growing on an average 7% of GDP per year. The inflation is under control. We have reasonable reserve balances, and our exchange rate has been also very steady. But our economic philosophy starts from very small but a very focused origin. We want to make the life of ordinary people better in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of empowerment, in terms of mobility. That is the building block of our vision of a new society. So whenever we look at any problem, be it energy, be it health, be it education, we start from the small building block of ordinary folks in our society. And energy services, including the provision of electricity, is a priority from that point of view. Although we generate, by comparison, small amount of electricity, but we have been able to provide access to electricity of more than 80% of the population in the country. And we hope by next couple of years we'll be able to provide access to electricity to the whole population. Providing affordable energy services is another goal. Obviously, electricity is part of that. But that's a huge challenge that has been mentioned in the two lectures, how to provide, let's say, replace the firewood by other energy services which are more modern. So, we have been trying to look at our own resources in hydrocarbon areas. Once we thought that we had a lot of oil, gas resources, but it turned out that as of now, the resources are depleting. But then we have huge area in the Bay of Bengal, which waits to be explored. And this was also a very exemplary cooperation between Bangladesh and India and Myanmar, that we are able to establish our maritime boundaries peacefully. Now, the prices of oil and gas have been a double-edged sword. As mentioned by His Excellency Dharmendra Pradhan, that when the oil prices fell, it was a blessing in disguise for all of us, a boon for all of us. But then it also dampened the oil and gas exploration. Some of the contracts that we had, they started dragging their foot. And the large deep sea that we have divided them into blocks waiting to be explored. We have some interest, but I guess the discussion that has been mooted in the earlier session, that a balancing of the price of oil between consumers and producers, which will also leave enough incentive for exploration of hydrocarbon, is very crucial. I don't know what is the magic number, but I wish we try to find out and reach that magic balance. We, for one, have been going through change of energy mix in our whole energy sector. We were too dependent on gas, but since we're running short of our own resources, we have been diversifying into other areas, including importation of LNG, which we are about to start next year, hopefully. And since we have a huge, by our standard, gas infrastructure already built in the country on the basis of domestic supply of gas, the LNG supply would be easily fed into the system. As of now, we have power plants which are waiting to be commissioned or which are not operating for sort of lack of sufficient gas. We have factories which are starved of gas. So we have plans to import LNG, and also we are, in this regard, we have also started finding other ways of cooperation with our neighbor. India, we are on 3 sides, we are bordered by India. Only in the last half a decade or little over that, we started from both India and Bangladesh, we started finding ways of cooperating between our countries. And now some of them have borne fruits. We import about 600 megawatt of power from India, which will be scaled up to another 500 megawatt by next year. India is cooperating in our oil and gas exploration in shallow waters. We are hoping to cooperate between India, Bangladesh, and Bhutan to jointly explore hydropower in Bhutan. We are planning to execute and implement pipeline between Indian refinery and our hub in the northern Bangladesh. We are also talking about other cooperation with India about importation of LNG and establishment of power plants based on LNG. So a whole area of cooperation has emerged between Bangladesh and India, and we still trying to find out the optimal way to cooperate between our two countries. It has to be win-win for both countries to be productive in the long run. And we are hopeful that when our Honorable Prime Minister visits India in a couple of days' time, new contracts would be signed, new agreements would be initialed, so that we find newer ways of optimizing our resources, both in terms of exploring our basic resources or putting them into use. Because as a developing country, we may have a lot of dreams, but we have to cater them to the resource constraint that we are in, which means we'll have to emphasize on efficiency, both from upstream down to consumer end. Efficiency should be our byword, which means in power generation we have to find ways of cogeneration and tri-generation. Not in small power plants, even in big power plants, I think engineers have not found ways of cogeneration and tri-generation in big power plants. We have to find ways of consuming less of energy while getting more benefits out of it. We have to be responsible in use of energy. It's not only efficiency, but responsibility would be crucial for us. That takes us even from energy to other secondary products like water. If we are frugal in use of water, then we save on energy. So we need to understand the whole energy use chain and try to be frugal and modest in our use. If we do that, we will be able to do with much less and still be able to do our job. Moderation is not the byword in the society now, but I think moderation is very important for nations which are trying to move forward. As we talk of cooperation here, and energy security has been a word, but as we all know, energy has been a bone of contention, the apple of discord between countries. So we need to ask ourselves how we can get out of this situation where a zero-sum game is converted into a non-zero-sum game. And we have to believe in that equation. Globally, there is a trend towards isolation now, which doesn't augur well for cooperation and the world that we want to build upon. So I think this platform should reassert our confidence and our belief in cooperation between countries, that we look for ways of helping each other and working out a win-win situation, non-zero-sum game between countries, rather than walk away from the world. So with these words and hoping that the conference will find new ways to help us, advise us, and charter new pathways, big leap of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. You point out how energy can be, as you put it, an apple of discord between countries. And I think your emphasis on the efficiency that's gained from regional cooperation is a very important message. And as you've described, the growing cooperation between India and Bangladesh and to continue to find a more optimal way, as you put it, to cooperate is a very useful message today. So let me now invite the Minister from Bhutan to join us at the platform.
Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, let me take this opportunity to mention that it is with immense humility that I have accepted the kind invitation of Shri Dharmendra Pradhan, Honorable Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, to partake in this premier event and share my perspective to this august gathering on a subject matter that concerns each one of us and the global economy. I and my delegation remain deeply honored to be invited to this flagship event on oil and gas sector. Mr. Chairman, we have seen for ourselves how dynamics of global energy market have been influencing the economic growth and the future outlook of our countries. While the global demand for energy continues to increase, largely on account of the expanding growth of the emerging economies, the energy suppliers and the price fluctuation of crude oil for varied reasons have raised concerns for energy security, especially in the developing regions like South Asia and the African economies. With rapid urbanization and industrialization in these regions, the need for energy has been increasing exponentially over the years. Mr. Chairman, to meet the aspirations of our people for affordable and reliable energy to fuel economic growth as well as for lighting and heating purposes, the countries are facing a daunting challenge of meeting the growing energy demand on one hand and concerns over the climate change on the other hand. Therefore, there is a need for the issue of energy security to be discussed alongside the concerns of climate change. For this reason, I personally feel that the timing of this international energy event, which is happening almost immediately after the conclusion of Marrakesh COP22, clearly indicates India's continuous effort in fostering diversification of energy mix and accelerating the transformation of energy sources from traditional coal and oil to unconventional hydrocarbons such as shale gas, coal-bed methane, etc., and to other alternative renewable energy sources. India's openness to change and new ideas in bringing efficiency in its hydrocarbon market through continuous research and development and policy reforms has significantly contributed to the development and transformation of its energy landscape. Through such events and forums, India has been playing a pivotal role in bringing together renowned personalities, experts, and investors in the oil and gas sector from all across the world to forge high-level discussions, exchange of knowledge and expertise for greater benefit of the region and beyond. India, as the key supplier of oil and gas to the other South Asian countries, including Bhutan, has been instrumental in addressing energy security concerns in the region. Therefore, it is in the interest of Bhutan and other South Asian countries to see oil and gas industry in India become efficient and modernized. Mr. Chairman, with economic development and expanding middle-income population in Bhutan, the demand for energy, specifically oil and gas, has been increasing each year. The total import of coal products has, for instance, increased from a mere 370 million rupees in 1998 to almost rupees 8 billion in 2015, out of which motor fuel contributed around 92% of the total import, LPG around 3%, kerosene around 1%, and the remaining for other industrial uses. In this context, I would like to mention that the generous support from the Government of India in the supply of subsidized kerosene oil and LPG has immensely benefited the low-income population of Bhutan. This has not only reduced health hazards of our rural families, but also contributed greatly in our efforts to conserve national forest. Currently, Bhutan gets 1,250 kiloliters of kerosene and 1,700 metric ton LPG cylinder per month through Indian Oil Corporation and Bharat Petroleum Corporation. The people and the Royal Government of Bhutan remain extremely grateful to the Government of India for the continuous support extended in this sector. Mr. Chairman, I would like to inform the gathering here that as my ministry is responsible for distribution of coal products and services in the country, we have been working very closely with some of the prominent principal oil companies, largely Indian Oil Corporation and Bharat Petroleum, to make the coal products and services easily accessible to our people. While major towns and districts currently have access to petroleum distribution services, the government intends to further take the coal products and services to all rural blocks, including the other satellite towns. We are also working with the principal oil companies to standardize the fuel stations, improve its service quality, and modernize the existing retail outlets for efficient deliveries of such services in the country. The dominant source of energy in Bhutan are hydroelectricity and biomass. The energy mix, however, has undergone some transformation over the years, with dependence on hydroelectricity increased. At the same time, with the availability of modern energies at home, LPG and kerosene, the consumption of fuel wood has reduced significantly. The hydroelectricity plays a predominant role in Bhutan's economic growth and development. I am happy to inform that in recent times, we have made some notable achievements in hydropower sector for mutual benefit of both the countries. Out of 30,000 megawatt of estimated hydropower potential, the government has plans to achieve 10,000 megawatt under the Accelerated Hydropower Development Agreement with the Government of India. Currently, Bhutan has 1,006 megawatt of hydropower in operation, and additional 3,658 megawatt are under construction. In addition, preparatory works are underway to harness and achieve the remaining energy targets. The decades of hard work and investments in hydroelectricity has helped both Bhutan and India to reap the benefits of clean and reliable power supplies today. We remain committed to strengthening our engagements in taking the power projects further to provide sustainable source of efficient and clean energy in the country, as well as contribute towards meeting India's growing energy needs. Mr. Chairman, Bhutan has also embarked on exploring other untapped potentials in renewable energies such as solar and wind. We have put in place renewable energy policy in 2013 to develop and harness economic benefits through investment in renewable energy sector. Bhutan's commitment in this sector is evident from its active participation in the regional and international forums and conventions. As a proponent of the policies that balance the energy security for sustainable economic growth and achieving climate change objectives, we are committed in our pledge to remain carbon neutral under the Paris Agreement. Bhutan looks forward to learning from India's rich experience in the energy sector, and this flagship event is an excellent forum to gain insights and discuss energy-related issues, exchange knowledge and ideas, and more importantly, interact directly with potential investors in the oil and gas sector. In conclusion, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the people and the Government of India for generous support extended to Bhutan, particularly in the energy sector. Once again, I would like to thank Shri Dharmendra Pradhan Ji, Honorable Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, and his team for the kind invitation and warm hospitality to me and my delegation. Last but not least, we look forward to further deepening our engagements and interactions through such events and forums for continuous transformation of the energy landscape and strive towards achieving our common objectives of providing clean, reliable, and affordable energy to our peoples. Thank you, and Tashidele.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I think your remarks about the relationship with India, both in terms of refined products and in terms of hydropower, shows the power of interdependence. The growth that you gave in the value of oil imports, I think is roughly 30 times the growth since 1998, very dramatic. And I think you made the very important point that that also relieves pressure on Bhutan's forests and helps the environment in that regard. Brazil is a very big country, a very important country, a country with major opportunities, major impact, and some major challenges. And so let me invite the Minister from Brazil now to the platform.
Your Excellencies, Ministers, in the name of the Minister of Petroleum Gas, Natural Gas of India, I'd like to salute all my colleagues, Dr. Daniel, Ambassador of Brazil here in India. It's an honor and a pleasure to take part on this meeting here in India, our BRICS partner. Throughout my talk, I would like to briefly describe the main highlights of Brazil oil and gas industry, especially those regarding current government actions and strategy to support the recovery of our petroleum industry. Brazil is a big country with about 7.5 million square kilometers of sedimentary basins, among which few are mature, others are in midlife, but the biggest part are considered as new frontier. As you probably know, we also have a high prospective area named Pre-Salt at the Campos and Santos offshore basins, covering about 150,000 square kilometers. At this very prolific area, there has been already discovered about over 50 billion barrels of oil equivalent. The current petroleum price, below $50 has fostered the main pre-salt operator to develop technologies in order to reduce development costs, making it feasible the oil and gas production at an area with an average water depth of about 2 kilometers, plus approximately 5 kilometers of sediments, and located between 200 to 300 kilometers away from the shore. Most the pre-salt discovered are of mid-density oil, about 30 degrees API. There is also a potential market for the natural gas, considering that São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, the most popular and industrialized region of our country, are also the closest geographic landfall for a pipeline to shore. Considering the high importance of the petroleum industry for the country, we just had a legal framework review, allowing companies other than Petrobras to become operators on production sharing contracts at the pre-salt region, as well as revoking the compulsory participation of Petrobras in this project, which is now an option to the company. I can also assure that other improvements are in course towards a more stable and economically rational environment, as well as an effort to clearly separate the role of all players in the industry. In that sense, the federal government is the entity promoting the policies that will foster further investments in the country. The regulatory agency, ANP, also present here, is in charge of issuing the necessary regulation to address the necessary policy change and of monitoring the execution of the contract. The governance process and management of our state-owned companies are being revised and modernize as well, aiming the more transparency and publicity. Petrobras recovering is following business strategies designed to generate value to its shareholders. This process in itself also represents a myriad of opportunity in the country as the company executes its divestiture program. Meanwhile, public policies have been shaped focused on the development of the entire industry and on creating a stable and attractive environment to new players and investors. In the new environment, we are planning 3 bid rounds for 2017. The first one is composed of marginal oil fields and is being designed for small oil companies. It will be held in the first quarter of 2017. The other 2 auctions are composed of exploratory blocks and unitized oil fields in the pre-salt area. Those are the 14th bid round for concession area and the second pre-salt bid round for production sharing areas. Those bids are planned to take place in the 3rd quarter of next year. Among the 3 bid rounds, we can assure there are good opportunities to an entire range of foreign oil companies, from big to small. Finally, considering the long-term maturity of exploration and production contract, it is important to reassure our commitment to regulatory stability, meaning full respect for terms and conditions of contracts signed with the federal government. Therefore, I stimulate interested companies to do like many other international companies, come to Brazil and explore the many opportunities flourishing in our country. Good conference to you all.
Well, Mr. Minister, I think many people listened with great care to your very concise description of what you call the recovery of the Brazilian oil industry and the principles of competition, different perspectives, regulatory stability, and an open industry, and getting all of that aimed at both creating a recovery of the Brazilian industry and at the same time also creating opportunities for companies represented here and from around the world. I'd like next to, yes. Okay, last, at the end. Okay. I'd like to ask the Minister from Mauritius now to come to the platform.
Honorable Shri Dharmendra Pradhan, Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas of India, Honorable Ministers, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, CEOs, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all of you. First of all, on behalf of the Government of Mauritius and on my own personal name, I would like to thank the Government of India for inviting me to lead a Mauritian delegation to participate in the 12th edition of Petrotech this year, and for giving me the opportunity to address you on this occasion. It is indeed with a deep sense of emotion that I stand here, given the historical and brotherly relationships between our two countries and the blood ties between our two people. Over the decades, these relations have expanded over numerous sectors, so much so that now India is Mauritius' largest trading partner. For the year 2014-2015, Indian exports amounted to $1.9 billion and imports to $21.19 million. There are over 100 Indian companies which are operating in Mauritius across all sectors of the economy, namely agro-industry, manufacturing, tourism and real estate, financial services, ICT, healthcare, and education. And recently, after the visit of the Mauritian Minister of Finance, Pravin Jagannath, to India, the government of India responded positively, and our two countries signed a memorandum of understanding for a grant assistance of 12.7 billion rupees for major infrastructure projects in Mauritius. This testifies our solid and deep mutual relation of trust and friendship. We welcome this gesture with deep gratitude and express our sincere appreciation to the Indian government for its continuous and unflinching support to Mauritius. We are confident that India will pursue in this endeavor to provide financial and technical assistance to Mauritius. Friends, the petroleum products constitute a major part of trade exchanges between Mauritius and India. To further consolidate this cooperation in the petroleum sector, the State Trading Corporation of Mauritius has in November 2014 signed an MOU with Mangalore Refinery and Indian Oil Corporation for the setting up of a petroleum terminal with the objective of re-exporting petroleum products to Indian Ocean region and to mainland Africa. According to the pre-feasibility study undertaken by Engineers India Limited, there are prospects to trade about 3.2 million tons of products annually from Mauritius during the period 2020-2025, and which is expected to treble during the period 2026-2035 to reach 9.5 million tons. The total cost of the project is estimated at $262 million. India is providing a grant of around $200 million to Mauritius for the realization of port development projects, and the petroleum component will comprise of an oil terminal, storage tanks of a capacity of around 500,000 tons, and a jetty to accommodate very large vessels. France, as a small island development state and without land-based natural resources, Mauritius has to resort to the importation of petroleum products. Since 2006, Mauritius is procuring its entire requirements of white and black oils from Mangalore, resulting in an element of stability in an ever-changing sector. The constant fluctuation of petroleum prices on the global market can be lethal for an economy. Producer and non-producer countries face great challenge to sustain an increase or decrease in production and prices. Some of the leading oil producers have had to take unprecedented decisions due to the decrease in price. Saudi Arabia is diversifying its economic base, and Venezuela is living its worst economic crisis. We face multiple challenges and need to define long-term strategies and be always prepared for any scenario. Non-producer countries are vulnerable to the frequent changes of prices. Mauritius, as an importer of petroleum products, has redefined its strategies with regards to the storage capacity and the retail pricing policy. In many countries, retail price of petroleum products changes frequently, impacting on the country's economy and the everyday life of the population. Last year, we reviewed our pricing formula for the calculation of the retail price so that the decrease in prices of petroleum products on the world market could be passed on to consumers while at the same time be able to contain any eventual rise in prices. Ladies and gentlemen, this being said, the world is faced with no choice but to adopt a sustainable solution to the global challenges. New technologies are being developed to address issues of environmental pollution and climate change. renewable energy sources are gradually gaining over conventional sources. It is anticipated that by 2050, almost 80% of net added capacity for the generation of electricity will consist of solar and wind. These two renewable sources will represent 34% of power generation. As a small island developing state, Mauritius is among the more vulnerable countries which are prone to the dangers of environmental degradation. While we remain reliant upon fossil fuels, including hydrocarbons, meaningful actions are on our priority list, including cutting energy waste, decarbonization of the electricity system, and shifting to clean electricity and low-carbon fuels in transportation, buildings, and industry. Pollution of air by motor vehicles is being curbed by lowering the sulfur content in diesel. At present, the primary energy requirements in Mauritius are fulfilled mainly by fossil fuels, namely coal for power generation by independent power producers, around 31%, petroleum products comprising fuel oil, diesel, motor gasoline, marine bunker fuels, and aviation fuel, around 50%, and LPG for domestic and industrial uses, around 5%. The remaining 14% are provided by renewable sources. As per the world trend, the objective of Mauritius is to become 35% self-sufficient in supply of electricity through the use of renewable energy sources by 2025. India is aiming to achieve 40% in the near future. Moreover, the priorities include ensuring security of energy supply by diversifying the energy base. Bagasse will still remain the main component of the renewable energy mix. In addition to the higher contribution of solar, wind, waste to energy, and biomass crop, along with hydropower, an assessment on the feasibility of other renewable energy technologies is envisaged. It is also intended to look into the potential of introducing liquefied natural gas as an alternative conventional fuel. The Mauritian government is encouraging the setting up of small-scale and medium-scale distributed grid power producers across the country. In order to ensure a sustainable future, the globe has to face challenges posed by an extremely dynamic hydrocarbon sector. While it is recognized that achievement of development will continue to depend on the utilization of hydrocarbons as a reliable source of energy for years to come, we are at crossroads to choose how to do it wisely. Friends, the ultimate aim is to provide our population with energy at an affordable price and with a minimal level of pollution. The four-pillar strategy, namely energy access, energy efficiency, energy sustainability, and energy security as proposed by the Indian authorities and as elaborated by Sri Modi ji, will stand as guidance to all participants of Petrotech to achieve same in their respective countries. I thank you for attention.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. I think one of the points you've made is the vulnerability of small countries integrated in the world economy to the volatility of energy prices. I do want to remind the audience that if we have time, we'll certainly have questions. And so if you send in your questions written for the Q&A session, that will be appreciated. I presume there'll be people here who will be collecting them. Let me now ask the minister from Nepal to join us at the platform.
Honorable Minister Dharmendra Pradhan ji, His Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, different countries, Secretary Sri K.D. Tripathi ji, CEOs and Chairman, and other Excellencies. First of all, I would like to may heartily gratitude to the Government of the India, Ministry of the Petroleum and Natural Gas for invitation me and my delegation. Thank you. Energy is an important basis for the economic development of the world. The world leaders should pay attention and extend possible cooperation among the countries. Without energy, not a single country can move forward. Hence, this conference has become very much important to this region. I want to share how to face challenge in my country. The traditional cooking fuel still accounts for 70% of the total energy consumed in Nepal. The energy generated from petroleum products has a share of the around 13% in the mix. Likewise, the electricity generated from hydropower is 30% in the total energy consumption in Nepal. Further, the major chunk of the energy, around 80%, is accounted for residential consumption and 7% is for total energy consumed is utilized for industrial and transport sector, and 3.5% energy used in the commercial sector. Out of the available hydroelectricity potential of around 43,000 megawatt in the country, the current level of production is not even sufficient to meet the national demand. Hence, Nepal has been developing hydroelectricity in rapid manner, and within few years of time, we would be able to export the hydropower to our southern neighbors. For the first time, Nepal started sharing for hydrocarbon reserve in 1985. Primary study shows that there are indication of occurrence of hydrocarbon in the gaseous or liquid from different regions of Nepal. These regions are basically divided into 10 blocks of 5,000 square meters each for the exploration purpose, but till the period, Nepal has not been able to find a reliable source of the occurrence of the crude oil in the Nepalese soil. Necessary legal framework have been provided, and there are two separate acts for the promotion of the exploration activities and to attack foreign investment in the sector. In the past, some exploration companies were engaged for the study and research, but nothing concrete could come in the surface. Therefore, till the period there is on such concrete E&P activities for the country. All the requirement of the refined hydrocarbons has been made through import from India only. Nepal's import of refined petroleum products is in the range of 1.2 to 1.3 MMTPA, with the annual bill reaching around 1.2 billion of US dollar. Over the last year of time, we have experiment significant annual growth of the 12 to 14% in the area of the petroleum consumption. The traditional firewood is gradually replaced by the electricity and the LP gas. The demand of the LP gas alone is more than 15% per year. The supply of the refined petroleum products is taken care by a supply arrangement between two government-owned oil corporations of the India and Nepal. India Oil Corporation and Nepal Oil Corporation have been signing supply agreement every 5 years to time, and necessary discussions are underway between the companies to further extend the arrangement for the another terms of 5 years, as the existing arrangement is going to expire in March 2017. IOC and NOC are working to further strengthen the business ties by laying a unique course country petroleum pipeline of 38 km long, linking their two major depots. This will provide Nepal and probability to have a direct access into the India of vast petroleum network. Right Honorable Prime Minister of the India, Sri Narendra Modi, actually understood the limitation associated with the traditional day-to-day transportation of the petroleum products by tank trucks, and afford assistance of Indian rupees 200 crores to lay a petroleum product pipeline from India Oil Corporation, Raksol Depot to Amletganj Depot of Nepal Oil Corporation. Honorable State Minister of the Dharmendra Pradhan signed on G2G MOU with the Nepalese counterpartner in 2015. The construction of this pipeline and now the various activities are going on the implement this project, keeping in view of IOC prevailing infrastructure capability, experience, and core competency development in the field of petroleum pipeline. Nepal government and India government have already decided to assign the job of construction of this pipeline and other aligned facilities to the IOC. That NOC and IOC shall work together to materialize the project, and the time from at the end, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the Honorable Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan ji, who invited to me participate in this important Petrotech-2016 seminar, and gave an opportunity to deliver a few words in this highly professional gathering. Thank you to all.
Thank you, and thank you for your discussion of the interdependence between India and Nepal. I'm very pleased now to ask the Minister from Nigeria to take the platform.
The moderator and Minister Shri Prandan of India, and of course distinguished panel of discussants, various ministers from various countries, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm accompanied here by a fairly large panel comprising the Nigerian ambassador to India who is here, and of course about 3 or 4 officials from National Oil Company, NNPC, represented one of the major domestic oil companies, Oando, and of course the Secretary General of OPEC, our own Bakindo. Got to claim him. Very many years ago when I was a young boy, just growing up, I would be around my mother in a typical Nigerian village, which I think will probably be the typical villages that you will see in India. And like a boy of 5 or 6 or 7, I will literally run to every errand. And so I will run to the farm, I will run to school, I will run to play. And she will be seated by a firewood, a box firewood, making dinner or lunch, and wondering why I needed to spend this much energy. And so as I ran from one journey to another and came back, she would say to me, why are you always running? It's not good for your health. You could break your legs. It's not good for your energy consumption, energy savings, because you exhaust yourself and you're panting by the time you get back to me. It is not even good for your concentration, because by the time you finish, you can't even remember to read and prepare for your lessons. I should always be calm by the firewood, making lunch or making dinner. And in her mind, everything that I did was a mad race against time, which was completely unnecessary. In many ways, the challenges that we have in the hydrocarbon and energy area is indeed also a mad race against time. It is the balancing of supply and demand. It is the balancing of energy security. It is the balancing of commercialization, matched with affordability. It is the balancing of the consumer rights and emerging consumer power with the power of producers. In many ways, those races are leading us to matching the discoveries of major oil finds that eventually led to oil wars, oil exploitations that led to fight for oil sovereignty, oil supply that had to give way to oil technology and shale production, pricing wars that have eventually led to the strengthening of consumer, and the consumers are beginning to take over. I mean, the fact that you have over 6,500 attendees to this conference establishes for you, more comically, the fact of the growing nature of consumer strength. But where does Africa lie in this whole race for energy sufficiency and hydrocarbon war? Africa holds about 130 billion barrels of crude oil and about 502 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Africa holds about 8% of world reserves. Today, more than 40 countries out of about 54 countries in Africa are actively in exploration. 6 of the 10 biggest finds in oil and gas discoveries in 2014 were in Africa. And more than 500 companies are now exploring across the African continent. There have been major gas finds in Mozambique, in Tanzania, as well as rising exploration in Kenya and Uganda. And this has suddenly caused the world to take note of Africa as an emerging global power in oil and gas. The Gulf of Guinea, in which Nigeria is based, is very prolific in terms of hydrocarbon availability. Nigeria boasts of about 37 billion barrels of proved and probable crude oil reserves, and many would argue probably something not too far away from undiscovered reserves. And Nigeria holds about 192 trillion cubic feet of proven natural gas as of January 2016. Nigeria holds the largest natural gas reserves in Africa and currently produces about 7 BCF per day of natural gas as of 2016. It therefore ranks amongst the top 30 all over the world. Today we produce oil and gas from 220 fields, and there's still about 220 fields that have not even been developed in the Niger Delta. Deep water is providing a lot of gas and oil resource for Nigeria, and about 6 producing deep water fields have shown huge potentials. In fact, the Usan field alone, which was started in 2012, by 2020 will be providing over 40% of our total liquids production in Nigeria. And yet, as recent as just a month ago, the Bosi final finds showed a deposit of over 1.5 billion barrels of oil. What this says is that Africa, and indeed Nigeria, is blessed with oil. But there are lots of challenges that go with this. There are lots of infrastructural deficits, and a lot of money needs to be spent on doing this. Over 20,000 kilometers of pipeline is required in Nigeria today to be able to move oil from one point to another. Private sector funding is drying up in a very critical period, but funding is one of the things that is absolutely required by African countries like Nigeria to be able to develop their resource. Nigeria, for example, needs between $40 and $50 billion to enable it to completely harness its infrastructural needs. And Africa as a whole requires about $350 billion to be able to get into the investment and development processes in oil. Obviously, with the find of oil and the issues of transparency, which has made that for most African countries that found oil, over 20 to 30% of that resource was pillared away into private pockets. And so fraud had been a very major concern in African countries who were involved in this. The effect of this over the years fraud is a development that ought to have taken place by the huge amounts of money earned by oil, just never quite took place the way it should. And therefore, today you have emerging militancies in a couple of these producing areas. Militancy for Nigeria is a major issue as communities begin to struggle with the issue of resource ownership and resource control. Subsidy, mentioned by the Prime Minister today, is a major concern. We're in an era where we cannot, for obvious needs of making sure that the market is not in any way unliberalized, we're in a situation where we cannot provide subsidy to the teeming populations of the poor in our country. But yet, some level of support is what they need. And yet, of course, the environmental issues, as we all begin to move to the green revolution and look for cleaner energy. But at a time when most African countries are just barely coming into the production fields. So we're in a race to catch up with the world, but we're almost in a race of futility. Because as we go into production, the rest of the world is moving out from those production concerns into much cleaner energy concerns. Now, where does India come in? India, for Nigeria, will provide for India, obviously, sufficient energy security. We have the reserves, we have the barrels, we have the gas. It will also provide very robust investment climate for companies coming out of India. And to India, we'll look to technology, obviously, and seeing what has been said today and what has happened over the last decade. Technology growth in India will obviously help fuel the speed at which we're able to harness our resources. We'll also be looking for investments, potentially, into some of the downstream and upstream areas. And we're already far gone in conversations with India along these lines. And so the blessing of oil and blessing of hydrocarbons comes to these challenges. the blessing of concentration and intensity in trying to find solutions comes with the need for us to wrap up the pace at which we move in Africa to catch up with the world, the rest of the world. But yet, when I leave this conference and return back to Nigeria, this is Christmas season. I probably will go back to my village and I probably will see my mother, who is now a bit aged. And this time, rather than the young boy who's running all over the place, he will see a fairly grown-up man. And she'll probably still be cradled, this time not over firewood, but over large kerosene-fired stoves with which she cooks now. And I said to her that I came to India and there were 6,500 attendees at the conference. And everybody was preaching on how to go on CNG and LNG and cleaner energy. And she'll probably laugh at me and tell me we're still in this mad race. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those marvelous remarks, and I think we all will remember what you mean by the mad race against time, both in personal lives, but also in terms of the oil and gas industry. Also, of course, you laid out the growing role of Africa in terms of its energy potential. As I think you said, 6 of the 10 biggest finds in last year, in 2014, were in Africa. But as you emphasized, there are big investment needs that are required for Africa as well. So, indeed, thank you for those remarks. And we hope that at least sometimes that mad race against time will slow down a little bit. Let me now invite the Minister of Qatar to take the platform. I should tell you all that he wears 2 hats, not 1 hat. He's not only the Minister from Qatar, but also for the last 2 years he's been the President of OPEC during what have to be 2 of the most tumultuous years for OPEC. So we welcome you to the platform.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished audience, ladies and gentlemen. Very good afternoon to you all. Thank you, Dr. Daniel Yergin, for introducing me. I come from state of Qatar, very well known for its passion for sport, education, quality education, and natural gas. Qatar sat on the biggest oil or biggest gas field in the world for a quarter of a century, known to us, but until His Highness Father Emir took the decision, and it was led by his vision to monetize and develop this field. At that time, pure feasibility study cannot support development of such a field. No customer to buy the gas, no infrastructure, no partner with the financial and technical support secured, but Qatar went ahead, led by His Highness Father Emir, and started to build the biggest LNG terminal on earth. Only then we started to get partners, buyers, and financiers. Today, we produce 77 million tons of LNG with a strategy to have the full value chain for additional reliability of supply. We have the production facilities, the huge processing facilities, storage, transportation, biggest LNG company on earth. That resulted in reliable supply of LNG for the last 20 years. I'm proud to say that we are the biggest supplier of LNG to this country for a number of years. The gas has bright future, as I cannot see practical, viable, affordable source of energy to act as a bridge for lower carbon future source of energies except gas. Gas is the appropriate cleaner bridge to that future. Qatar is committed to be a reliable supplier, and when we started, the industry of LNG, we needed to be big because we are just situated relatively far from major markets worldwide. That's why we chose to go LNG to facilitate the transportation of gas. Today, we are enjoying more than 2 decades of continuous, reliable supply of LNG virtually to all continents. While in the coming few years, we may expect surplus of gas, but that surplus has depressed the gas price, which may lead to possible shortage in a few years' time. And we are taking this issue seriously and think responsibly of the security of supply. Let me move to OPEC and where OPEC is coming from, as suggested by Dr. Daniel Yergin. I should shed light on the recent development of OPEC and how OPEC thinks with regard to the energy generally and oil market in particular. Ladies and gentlemen, OPEC is more than half a century of age with a lot of experiences. OPEC also got a lot of experience from the oil industry, which is more than 150 years since its modern history. Our industry went into all sorts of experiences, the ups and the downs, accumulated a lot of experience, which led us to think really globally and responsibly. So we take huge responsibility in securing energy. Now, many people may think that the price of oil and the revenue is the major force behind OPEC and some other organization, but in reality, the accumulated experience and the responsibility taken by producers and exporters towards the world, towards the security of supply, and avoiding any economic shocks, led OPEC and many other organizations to think of ways and means to dampen these possible shocks and possible shortage of supplies. That's why we believe in the invisible hand of the free market. The only thing is we try to catalyze the natural process of balancing the market. When we see a situation like what we have, imbalanced supply and demand with large stock overhang, this situation didn't lead for a lot of winners. We couldn't see winners over the last 2.5 years when the oil price went down, surplus of oil production, stock overhang was high, GDP of the world was low, growth was sluggish, PMI and inflation were low. In fact, to some countries, deflation was the dominant feature of their economy over this period of low oil price. Except for a few countries like India, the rest didn't enjoy good economic parameters during this low downturn of oil price. Contrary to that, perhaps you saw over the last week, stock prices went up, a lot of trading took place, and we think that the market is responding positively to the signs of the process of rebalancing. So basically, healthier oil industry is healthier economy of the world. One may think that a little higher price may hamper the economy, but it doesn't seem to be true. If we think like accountants, maybe we think of the one single bill of energy, but that is not economics. Economics needs the total picture. Economics needs a lot of parameters, and they're all interrelated, and it may look ironic, better oil price would be good for consumers, net importers, but this is the reality. It improves the inflation, it improves the circulation of money, it adds to the multipliers, and it moves the economy worldwide. Perhaps we should see a better process towards more of balance between supply and demand, and we'll see also the stock overhang get to close to the 5 years average, which we think a good measure for balancing the market. And I can assure you that it is to the good of all the suppliers and the consumers, especially with the fact that we were extremely concerned about the drop over the last 2 years in the investment in oil and gas. It was unprecedented, 25% annual drop in investment in 2 consecutive years. This is unprecedented in our industry. Not only that, but analysts indicated that next year, if the market doesn't show a real process of balancing, again, there would be a huge drop in investment. That will bound to lead to shocks in economy of the world and also to the supply security. But we are confident that the measures taken by OPEC will be to the benefit of all. With this, I thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for that, first that brief description of the big decisions that Qatar took to supply the entire world, east and west, with LNG and the impact it had in creating a global marketplace. You did point out that there's a risk in a period of oversupply in the gas market, of underinvestment for the next period of demand growth. And I think you picked up, you made clear a very important point. India has been a big beneficiary of lower oil prices, but the global economy generally has not been. And we can see, as you say, the response of financial markets as well to the stabilization. And we appreciate your shedding light on some of the decision making. Let me now ask my friend, the Petroleum Minister from Sri Lanka, to come to the platform.
His Excellency Dharmendra Pradap, Indian Minister of Petroleum, distinguished members of the head table, honorable ministers, invitees, and the delegates representing various sectors. First of all, let me extend our thanks for the kind hospitality from the time we stepped into this country, and for the invitation for this conference by His Excellency Dharmendra Pradap. Sri Lanka, having listened to many countries that are consuming and many that are producing, Sri Lanka is presently 100% import of petroleum products and energy. But of course, we have been able to discover liquid natural gas in 2 of the 4 wells that were tried into by Cairns of India. Sri Lanka is presently looking at attracting investors in order to make use of the discoveries. I must say, when inviting investors into a smaller country like Sri Lanka, we must be ready with our infrastructure in order to attract investment. Presently, we are ready with our Petroleum Resources Development Act, which will go to the Parliament early next year, which will create an environment conducive for international investor of any level to walk into Sri Lanka without any fear. Our policies are based on international practice. Our vision is to achieve Sri Lanka to be a place of energy security. As you know, Sri Lanka is one of the safest countries in the world presently. And if you may look at Sri Lanka's access to energy, almost 99% of the people have access to electricity, which is presently out of hydro and mainly through fuel oil and coal. Sri Lanka being a destination for tourism, where the growth in tourism during the past few months has been 19% month to month. So in a country where there is huge potential for tourism, when producing energy, we have to be very careful of the energy mix. We have been talking about introducing LNG to our country for many years, but it was only recently, about 5 to 6 months back, as an initiative of His Excellency Maithripala Sirisena, the President, we were able to include LNG into our energy mix. And also, I must make this opportunity to extend our gratitude towards India for the cooperation of the Indian government as decided by His Excellency Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, to move away from an investment that the Indians have decided to generate electricity through coal into a LNG investment. I must thank my colleague Dharmendra Pradhan, who was very keen to help Sri Lanka towards that, since both the Prime Minister of India and President of Sri Lanka are ardent supporters of protecting environment, who have contributed voluntarily to Paris Agreement COP21. So in such circumstances, I must say, we were able to take another step forward. During the past few weeks, I must say, Sri Lankan government took a decision to issue a letter of interest to the Indian government and the Japanese government to set up 2 LNG plants of 500 megawatts capacity. And the LOI presently is before the Attorney General, will be issued very soon, which will take our energy relationship another long way forward. Also, I must say, if you take the relationship in the region and the world, though Sri Lanka is a country of 21 million people, we must think of preserving energy for the future. Energy, when you say hydrocarbons, when you burn as diesel or petrol or kerosene oil, that's the end of that energy factor. But if we can presently think of using more and more such resources towards petrochemical industry, we may be able to preserve such energy for the future, and maybe we can concentrate more towards cleaner energy sources like LNG that you find presently in abundance across the world, and renewable energy that has not been utilized by many countries, including Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is known as a country for sun and the sea by many people who would love to spend a holiday in Sri Lanka. Nevertheless, we are not making use of solar power, neither solar power nor wind energy in a significant way. So, I believe presently it is the era for all of us to divert our attention towards gas and renewable energy. I take this opportunity as one of the most important events for all of us, because we get to share our experience. We could listen to the giants in the industry as well as new entrants, and my team will be able to interact with policymakers, investors, and other private sector intellectuals. So we will be able to all go back home as politicians and professionals who had gained something within a few days in India. I believe Sri Lanka, as a new entrant to the system, is presently opening our hands to the people, to the experts in the industry. There is a new investment zone in Hambantota with the new port development, and there is a new city, a financial city that is being built in Sri Lanka, where the energy requirement will be massive in a 3 to 4 years' time. So with Sri Lanka running at a positive mode, with a, how do I say, with a unique political model where both main parties are running the country together presently. So the political environment is there, security is there, infrastructure is there, and our legal framework is there. Indian Oil Company, presently in business in Sri Lanka, is doing very well in Sri Lanka. So I invite all of you to join hands to invest in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your description of creating an energy security environment that gives security to investors in terms of the predictability and the competitiveness of the terms. We were concerned that one minister wouldn't make it because of airplane connections, but the minister succeeded in doing that. And so I'd like to invite the minister from Cyprus, a country looking also at new energy development, to come to the platform.
Honorable Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas of India, dear Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, first of all, allow me to thank the organizers for the kind invitation to be addressing such a distinguished audience, and of course the Government of India for the invitation to participate in tomorrow's ministerial conference. Cyprus is a small island nation in the heart of the Eastern Mediterranean, a full member state of the European Union and in the Eurozone. But as an island nation, as my colleague from the Mauritius mentioned earlier, it also has its challenges with regards to having an isolated energy system. As a system, as in energy, we are fully dependent on imports of liquid fuel, which represent about 90% of our energy mix, with the remaining 10% coming from renewables, solar and wind, primarily wind at this stage. But even though Cyprus has its challenges and it's facing issues with no interconnections to any other country, it has been blessed with the discovery of natural gas in 2011. So while at this moment in time we are net consumers of energy, and I have to say that we have also been able to benefit over the past few years of the financial troubles that the country have had from the prices of oil, from the low prices of oil. We have been hampered by our efforts and our aspirations to become net producers of energy ourselves. So what is the situation in the oil and gas industry, which is, I have to say, in Cyprus still in its infancy, right? We have 5 blocks licensed out to big multinationals such as Eni, Total, Shell, Noble, Energy, Delek. We have a discovery of natural gas, and my colleague from Nigeria earlier mentioned about 2014. I have to say that one of the biggest, if not the biggest discovery in 2015 was from the Eastern Mediterranean, the Zohr discovery in Egypt, which, according to the geologists, is fully associated with the Cyprus exclusive economic zone. So after that discovery, Cyprus went ahead to announce a 3rd licensing round, making available 3 blocks. And I have to say that as early as next week, we will be able to announce who among the bidders, which include Exxon, Qatar Petroleum, Statoil, Eni, Total, and others, who among these will be able to win some of these blocks who appear to be very, very promising. Now, one of our most fundamental efforts in an otherwise unstable region in the Eastern Mediterranean has been to create both the political but also the predictable investment environments for investors to feel welcomed. So as a country, we have signed delimitation agreements with almost all of our neighbors, with Egypt, with Israel, with Lebanon. We have signed unitization agreement with Egypt, and we are negotiating the other 2. We are now in discussions for bilateral agreements for cross-boundary pipelines between us and Egypt, because the primary means that we aspire to become producers is, at this moment in time, to pipe the gas to Egypt and from there liquefy. There are 2 idle LNG terminals, liquefy the gas and ship it and generate that flexibility which has so much been talked about. While at the same time we have a fully harmonized legislation, fully harmonized with EU acquis, to make it very transparent, predictable to investors, and this is why we are also seeing some of the biggest names in the industry being interested in the region. So, because I know we are pressed with time, Daniel, I'll have to say that with regards to the choices, Cyprus has abundance of sunshine, 300 days a year of energy. We are not abandoning our renewables energy strategy. On the contrary, we are accelerating towards mostly solar. In a distributed, we envision a distributed environment where solar power will be generated by every household. And once we have technologies such as storage maturing even further, coming into industrial scale, we will also be able to see the second dimension. And if you couple that with smart grids as well, then you have what we are aspiring for, clean energy, and produce as much of that as possible. Despite the fact that we will be producers very soon, if we produce clean energy ourselves, we will be able to export the vast majority of the gas or oil, should that be discovered. So with that, once again, thank you very much for your attention, and I hope great deliberations for this conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Earlier, Minister Kakiku from Nigeria talked about a mad race against time, and Minister Lakotripis truly had a mad race against time because he only arrived just a couple of hours ago because of airplane delays. But we thank you for coming, and I think you end on what we have to say is an optimistic note as a new area for development of natural gas is beginning in the Eastern Mediterranean. Cyprus is very much at the center of it, and so I think you're illuminating that as a focus for the future unfolding over the next 5 or 10 years, and indeed the international collaboration that will require is a very important contribution to this conference, so thank you for that. I know our next session begins at 2, and somewhere in between now and 2 there's need for lunchtime. So I would like to do is thank Minister Pradhan, the Honorable Minister, who is the patron of this conference, and all of the ministers who are on this panel for giving us such a broad and informative perspective and an opportunity for all of us to learn. Thank you to you all.
Thank you, Mr. Yergin. Thanking also all our honorable ministers. May I request the honorable ministers to kindly step forward for a group photograph, and with that we close the session.